Thumbs up.
Welcome to the Conspiracy Farm, where we don't start the conspiracies, we just add the water. And now, your host of the most state-of-the-art, most informed podcast on the interweb, I present to you Pat Miletich and Jeffrey Wilson. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for war?
You know what that sound means, ladies and gentlemen. Back in action with you for another installment for the archives. Jeffrey Wilson coming to you from the farm with my partner in crime. He was forged in a cauldron of fire. He is made of steel and brawn. He slays dragons and consumes planets. Former UFC heavyweight, or former champion, Hall of Famer, Pat Miletich. What's up, champ?
Actually, all that stuff you said is not true. It's mostly just scar tissue now.
Well, I left out the Master of Tango, so... How you doing this week, champ?
I'm doing good because I have an American flag as my background, and you have O.J. Simpson.
He didn't do it, dude. He didn't do it. O.J. was framed, yo. Man, this is going to be a good one. I am in the vein of kind of where we've really been gravitating towards here on the show. You know, we've been wanting to have a 5G expert on, and so we threw that out a couple weeks ago. And one of our original T-shirt purchasers, one of our original farmers, Stephen Watt out of Canada. Shout out to our boy Stefan. That and R.I.P. man, Dylan McKay, dude, Luke Perry, just a heavy blow today. But we are going to chop it up with an individual breaking it down on Geo-Engineering, weather modification, as well as the 5G. He's an author. He's a researcher. He's a scholar. The guy is a big brain doing show prep elements, and he is the proprietor of the website that he's going to give out here in a moment. Jim Lee, how are you, sir?
Excellent. Want to fight about it?
I don't.
Your co-host, on the other hand, I don't want to fight him.
No,
I don't even remotely have any interest in fighting anymore. There's no money in it for me.
He's done with it.
There's just no money. I mean, I might as well just not fight, right?
Jiu-Jitsu is a favorite of mine, and I was reading up on you and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I assume you're a Royce Gracie fan.
Oh, always been a Royce Gracie fan. Of course, I mean, I grew up in the American wrestling circles, and of course, spent a lot of years doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Russian Sambo and many other arts, Muay Thai and karate and boxing and you name it. So just kind of hodgepodge of everything put together, brother.
Very cool. I practiced martial arts when I was a child, and I had the very interesting non-sanctioned fight, me at 180 pounds versus a 420-pound Hawaiian Golden Gloves Muay Thai boxer.
And that worked out well for you, I'm assuming.
Oh, it did.
Sorry, guys.
Several thumb prints to the underside of the jaw later, and he was tapping out.
Nice.
Yeah, so big fan of martial arts.
That's great. Well, I am basically if you look at me, I'm what's left of the science experiment of mixed martial arts. It just leaves behind a trail of scar tissue and CTE. You know, that's how we roll, brother.
But don't let him fool you. Listen to this show. He's sharp as a whip, and we're going to get into it tonight. And he's going to prove.
Oh, I've watched a couple shows already. So
I appreciate it,
what
man.
I'm in for.
Absolutely. So, I mean, again, man, you're one of those kind of eclectic thinkers, man, and I really like to talk to people like yourself that you're really kind of schooled and really a bunch of different backgrounds, especially in the field we want to talk about tonight. Listening to a couple of your videos. We're going to talk a little bit again about Wi-Fi, EMFs, the ramifications, if you will, good and bad of 5G, weather modification, geoengineering, Agenda 21, because in my opinion, it all kind of ties together. But, your background, the effects of EMFs. You've dealt with it. You've experienced the side effects. Give us your background, if you will, and where you came from and how just a little bit of background where you came from, and then we'll get into it.
Well, I'm, self-taught. I'm just, a regular guy. I've got two children, a daughter who's 9 and a daughter who's 2. Been married 19 years. I'm from Sumter, South Carolina, and I'm eternally curious. part of what I do is, fate, and the other part is just coincidence. I was born in the year of the dragon, and apparently dragons control the weather in Chinese mythology.
Interesting.
So it's just an interesting little connection there. And I've always been fascinated by resonations and how electromagnetics and sonic features affect human health. And that's because I worked in a car stereo shop, and I, from a very early age, realized that a 10 hertz, 18-inch Cerwin-Vega subwoofer could, literally knock my voice out or make me feel euphoric or, things like that. So I've always been interested in, how resonant things affect the human body. So I've gone by the nickname Resonated, REZN8D, for the longest time before finally just telling everybody who my real name is, put my address and all that stuff out there. Originally I was very interested in, mind control weapons and, all of that sort of stuff. And I've slowly gravitated more towards talking about geoengineering, because I see it as one of the greatest threats to humankind, and weather modification in general, because I realize how few people actually know anything about the subject.
Or even if they do, they poo-poo it as if it's not real. But as we're going to get into it is quite real. And, again, doing show prep and just kind of understanding what you're talking about in your work, it's not like this information is hidden. The history of weather modification goes back to the UN law of INMOD 1978. Why don't you kind of spell that out for people of how, not even just before that, you go back to cloud seeding with, Charles Hatfield, 1915, being paid by San Diego to make it rain in San Diego. Break down a little bit of the history of the establishment, the established weather modification, not a conspiracy theory, what's actually going on.
Well, I have a website specifically devoted to that, and it's called weathermodificationhistory.com. And what I have on there is basically a timeline from 1800 to present. And, you can basically dig into that where you'll see that I have newspaper articles starting as early as the very first one I have up here is a patent from...
Oh, wow, look at him. He's got the...
Yeah, 1880. And you're going on to Producing Rain, 1891. In total, I have 875 newspaper articles that you can scroll through. I mean,
that have established the existence of weather modification, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is...
Well, and back in those days, the late 1800s, early 1900s, on to up until we're starting to realize how a lot of this stuff is being done now, which freaks us out. Back then, I would think that the people in the 1800s, early 1900s, the farmers, everybody else is like, if you can make it rain, you're awesome, right? But that's not the case, correct?
Well, I mean, there are several different, periods of weather modification. And, Dr. James Roger Fleming, he's the preeminent historian of weather modification and, one of my heroes. I actually interviewed him last January at the American Meteorological Society's 21st Conference on Planned and Inadvertent Weather Modification. It was in Austin, Texas. And, basically, he was a good starting point for me, but I really expanded upon that. And he broke it down into, everything before 1946, it was called pluviculture. So Hatfield, and C.W. Post, the guy from Post Serial, these were the early rainmakers. They were attempting everything from firing cannons in the sky to, electrified sand. You name it, they tried it.
So you're saying the Post guy who was a part of Post Serial was somehow related to weather modification?
Certainly. He did a bunch of weather modification down in Texas. And you can literally come to our interactive timeline on weathermodificationhistory.com, click on pluviculture, and you can see right here. Are you able to see this on the screen?
Yes,
yeah,
we
absolutely,
are.
absolutely.
Okay, so you go to CW Post, Serial Czar and Rainmaker. That's his actual photo right there. And you can look at the articles about it, CW Post, Rainmaker. This is from Texas Co-op Power, and read all the history of, how he was making it rain in the early 1900s.
And again, and I hate to overstate this, because and to be redundant, because, ladies and gentlemen, we hear about conspiracy theory. Oh my God, this is another conspiracy theory, and we're going to get into chemtrails later on, but this all kind of ties together. What my man just laid out for you, going back to the 1800s, was the precedent being set that they have the ability to modify the weather. Period. The end. I'm sorry. Continue.
So it's not a theory.
It's not a theory. It is not theoretical. This is fact.
This is conspiracy fact.
For sure.
And the conspiracy is that most people don't know anything about this topic. And that's the most telling part for me, is that, they've been attempting to control the weather since the early 1800s. We could go back to the Civil War, Battle of Antietam, black powder rifles made it rain on the battlefield, China before that.
You're saying these methods were implemented during the Civil War?
Well, the effects of these types of things have been noted as far back as then, and
so the massive grouping, the discharge of tons of weapons at one time.
Yeah.
Dispersed into the powder and everything else, the burnt, the gunpowder up into the atmosphere, ends up causing it to rain, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so what they're called is cloud condensation nuclei, or
right.
CCN by the scientists. So what do you need to make a cloud? You need some dust, you need static electricity, and you need water. So, in the case of the Battle of Antietam, the dust that was provided was black powder, carbon black soot. The Native American Indians, I'm part Apache Choctaw, they would dance around a fire. The fire provided some of the updraft. They would stomp on dirt. The dirt would be lifted aloft. Rain dances actually made rain, or they wouldn't rain dance. So you could really, and plus, there may have been some kind of effect with the drum and the resonant frequencies generated by it, because it's this repetitive pounding of, you're creating sonic energy. So there's a lot there in the past, that, many different methods that were tried and, and may have had limited, success, but at the end of the day, we graduate from the, try anything under the sun period of pluviculture in 1946, when Vincent Schaefer, Irving Langmuir, and Bernard Vonnegut from the General Electric Laboratories invent cloud seeding. And
November 13th, 1946. You are correct.
There you go, and that's on our timeline as well. And what you'll see there is basically Vincent Schaefer breathed into a freezer, and cloud seeding was born. It was really that simple. And the interesting part about it is that less than a year later, and 11 months after General Electric scientists invented cloud seeding, they went out and tried to steer a hurricane. And it was called Project Cirrus. So they went out
October 13th, 1947, 180 pounds of dry ice dropped by an aircraft.
Yeah, and what happened was they actually ended up turning a tropical storm. It changed colors. It changed directions 180 degrees. It slammed into Georgia, killing some people and doing $3 million worth of damage.
Savannah, Georgia.
And
again, you got to almost stop and let people marinate on that, because you just said they seeded a tropical storm, which wound up hitting the shore of Savannah, Georgia, and killing people. They seeded a tropical storm, gang. And this was, like you said, Project Cirrus, October 13th, 1947. Look it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and all of this is available on weathermodificationhistory.com. And if you go to the interactive timeline, it's in chronological order. It's just going to blow your mind. And we're going to get to the NMOD Act you were talking about initially. So basically, it was invented in 1946. Less than a year later, the military and NOAA and the General Electric scientists were already screwing with hurricanes, and then we jump forward to the Vietnam War and Operation Popeye, Motor Pool, Intermediary Compatriot. It had several names because each time it got disclosed, they renamed it, but basically, Henry Kissinger and the CIA secretly were doing weather warfare over Vietnam. They didn't even tell the Secretary of Defense they were doing it. They were using not only silver iodide, like the General Electric scientist agreed to, but they were using lead iodide.
And this, again, is Operation Popeye, ladies and gentlemen, in the Vietnam War.
Yeah, Operation Popeye.
And that's the thing that...
And what happened was Jack Anderson, the hero of the day, one of the greatest reporters to ever live, he initially he was in Lyndon Johnson's office where he saw a little note on his desk that said something about weather modification over Laos. And he initially... revealed this in the Pentagon Papers. And, if you even go to his Wikipedia page, they'll tell you that the CIA tried to kill Jack Anderson, and it was because of Watergate. But if you really want to get down to the brass tacks, Watergate wasn't nearly as serious as Jack Anderson disclosing what happened with Operation Popeye. So it's my firm belief that the CIA tried to kill Jack Anderson because he... outed their plan, which led to an international ban on weather warfare called the Prohibition for the Convention for the Prohibition of Hostile Environmental Technology Uses, and they shorted that to NMOD, or the Environmental Modification Convention. It was signed in 1978.
Well, this was preceded, by the Weather Modification Act of 1972, and then the National Weather Modification Act of 1976.
Have you been all over my website? I swear to God.
Hey, dude, I do my show prep, brother. You
sure did. So, as a result of the disclosures, and it came around 1970, 1971, and I should probably bring that up on the screen just to share it with everybody at home. But as a result of those disclosures, several things happened. The Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972 was the first, and basically it goes like this. Jack Anderson talks to Senator Claiborne Pell, and Claiborne Pell, he has these hearings, and there were 3 of them. I have copies and transcripts of 2 of them. The third one is still classified to this day, and you got to imagine what the reaction was from the old bald white dudes up in Congress who were going, wait a minute, we can control the weather? I mean, that was probably their first initial reaction. Just like anybody else who would, today would go, this is all a conspiracy theory. You got to be kidding me. So they said, well, maybe we should know when people are modifying the weather over America. So they passed a law that states you have to fill out these forms and submit them to NOAA. And that's, National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration.
Yeah.
So you have to fill out a form before, during, and after you complete cloud seeding or any other type of weather modification technique in America, in America.
So clearly it does exist if you have to fill out forms in order to use it, ladies and gentlemen.
I can show you the form.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So here, let me do a little screen sharing real quick. Give me 1 second. And here we go. So this is the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972, and you can see here's the lead up to that. Weather modification activities to be reported to Commerce, NOAA Week. This is 1972. followed by proposed weather modification reporting regulations published, followed by weather modification activities now must be reported to NOAA. And here's the form you actually fill out. Marinate on that for a second. So this is not
There's a form you can use if you're going to use weather modification,
it's
champ.
NOAA Form 17-4, initial report on weather modification activities. And you have to say sponsor, who's paying for it, operator, who's doing it, target area, size of area, location.
Sounds like something I should fill out after a can of Hormel chili.
Yeah, man, that's exactly right. So to do that, you would fill out the form right here. You would check other for under number of modification days and major purpose. Check other, and then type in amount of agent used. Check other.
That's so
but
bizarre.
Literally, they have on here, the days and everything. What your purpose is: increase precipitation, alleviate hail or fog,
Airborne
or other,
ground, silver
hours
iodide,
of
carbon
apparatus
iodide.
operation by type, airborne or ground, and type of chemicals you use: silver iodide, carbon dioxide,
Urea, sodium chloride. I mean, they're literally listing these poisons and toxins that you're. Make sure you check this if you're going to be using sodium chloride or carbon.
Exactly. You're going to spray salt into the sky, which apparently salt is a geoengineering technique called marine cloud brightening, where they want to spray sea salt into clouds to make them brighter to cool the planet off. And urea, for those who don't know, that's pee-pee.
Yeah.
That's fertilizer.
The constellation Orion.
You're going to spray fertilizer into the atmosphere.
And silver iodide, of course. Can't forget that.
Yeah, and silver iodide is the most readily used. CO2, carbon dry ice, is usually used to clear clouds, but that's just the story there. So, then that was followed up by the Weather Modification Policy Act of 1976, and this bad boy basically said, hey, maybe we should actually write down. And it's Public Law 94-490. This is 1976. We need to know everything going on in America today, up to this point, because clearly we have not been doing our oversight and we missed a whole lot of stuff. So this got passed as well. And that was followed up by an actual report. Now, the report came right after NMOD, and it was called Weather Modification Programs, Problems, Policy, and Potential. And you can see that here. And basically, this is a 700-plus page parchment.
784.
That literally goes through the entire history of weather modification up to that point, every federal dollar ever spent on it, and all of that.
Okay, again, you got to stop. Marinate, ladies and gentlemen. In 1978, May of 1978, a 784-page document chronicled the government's use of weather modification up to that point. Not a conspiracy theory. The government even made a summary report on it.
And you can read that report. I have it on my script in totality, and I have read it. It is 784 pages, and you can scroll through the whole damn thing. And it is an eye-opener, to say the least. But this is kind of history repeating itself. So that's where we are today. So before we go any further, finally, we had the Environmental Modification Convention. This was the weather warfare ban. And I got the text of that right here, but regardless, scroll down to the bottom. This is what it actually looked like, the report. Hearing before the Committee on Foreign Relations, United States Senate, 95th Congress. Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques, October 3rd, 1978. And that's when they banned weather warfare.
How can you prove weather warfare, though? A typhoon hits your opponent. A tornado, massive tornado outbreak, any of these things, monsoons that flood a nation, you're not going to prove any of that.
That's a part of it. It's
totally improvable.
Well, part of Jim's work. It's right. These countries, you can't prove it.
But it's the perfect weapon to destroy a nation, right?
It's such the perfect weapon that Lyndon Johnson said, It lays the predicate and foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer. Chemtrails, anyone?
Yeah.
And ultimately to control the weather. He who controls the weather will control the world.
May 27th, 19th. Wow.
Yeah, and our general's sitting back in recliners going, man, China's getting a lot of rain.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, Abu Dhabi does that like once a week. They set up their whatever to make it rain once a week.
Yeah. Now we've
What-
got to fast
we're gonna-
forward.
we're gonna ask about that. We're gonna ask about
eventually,
that.
yeah.
two different groups from the United Arab Emirates that do the cloud ionization, weathergenerator.net, and Climate Control Global Trading LLC. I've got interviews set up with both of their chief scientists. But if you're wondering about Trump's Space Force, check this one out from Lyndon Johnson. Control of space means control of the world. From space, the masters of infinity would have the power to control Earth's weather, to cause drought and flood, to change the tides and raise the levels of the sea, to divert the Gulf Stream and change temperate climates to frigid.
That's
Wow.
what's going on here.
It sure is
been so
cold.
damn
It's
cold.
March freaking 4th, and it's like 20 below outside right now.
The vortex has been hammering us all winter. No, I've got to go back to the form that we have to fill out if we're going to do any weather modifications. And in there, it talks about silver iodide and a few other chemicals. Now, silver iodide, if I'm not mistaken, we have to tie this into 5G, and for that reason, metals being sprayed into the atmosphere, the microwaves from 5G.
I don't want to jump to 5G yet because I do have a couple questions.
Right, but we still have to tie it together because of that chemical and
For
some
sure. That's
other
what I'm saying.
metals.
All of this ties together between weather mod, geoengineering, and
So
5G.
that's the thing is, it's really important to tie that all together. At this point, it comes into view and a little more clarity in terms of Agenda 21, chemical, cloud seeding, the spraying, the chemtrails, the metals being sprayed, and now 5G. That's when it becomes diabolical. So that's how it all has to be tied together, right?
Well, I always have this this saying: don't blame climate change, blame the climate changers.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, so the climate changers, global warming is a myth. It's easily disprovable. It's all based on computer science models.
And the role of CO2.
Yeah, and it's all anthropogenic CO2. But if you really get down to the root of where all this comes from, there's something called the clathrate gun hypothesis. And basically, they took an ice core, which is, you take a pole and you stuff it into the Antarctic or, the North Pole.
We talked about ice cores last week, core samples.
You pull out an ice core and you go, all right, so here's this time and here's today. And right about here, we see dinosaurs. And then right here, we see a lot of dinosaur farts.
Methane.
Can't make this up.
Methane.
So they saw a lot of CO2 and an increase in methane, and they assumed that was dinosaur farts. And then right after that, they see a massive increase in methane. And they called that runaway global warming. So what they're saying today is that cow farts and you burning CO2 are going to cause methane clathrates, or frozen ice methane, to vent into the sky, causing runaway global warming, which will kill us.
Not just human beings burning CO2, we expel CO2, so it becomes humans are almost part of the problem. You're gonna have to start paying a tax to talk on your phone.
Stop having children.
Stop having children. China. Stop talking so much. Just stop talking. Stop expelling this poisonous O2 or CO2.
Really
or just get rid of all the climate warming believers.
This all ties into the Agenda 21, I believe.
Yeah.
So, okay, before we jump into 5G, and Pat, that was almost a perfect segue, but I did, and you said...
Almost perfect. See how he has to throw the little extra jab in there?
No, because it all does tie together, and you're absolutely correct. So before, I just want to drop a couple one-liners on you, and you kind of explain it before we jump into 5G. Cloud ionizers. How does that play into this?
Cloud ionizers are the latest form of cloud seeding, except they don't use chemicals. They use electricity. So instead of using any one of those in the check boxes, they use negatively charged ions to do weather modification. So like I mentioned earlier, in order to make a cloud, to make it rain, three things must occur. You have to have some form of aerosol, which is dust. You have to have a static charge and water vapor. So the static charge is what cloud ionizers work on. And instead of adding chemicals to a cloud to try to make it rain, they focus on taking the pollution that's already in the sky and making it stick to the water. The thing is, cloud seeding can not only be used to increase rainfall, it can be used to decrease rainfall. That's called overseeding. So if you put too many chemicals in the sky, basically there's too much dust and not enough water. There has to be an exact, perfect match for dust and water for it to grow into a large enough drop to fall to the ground. If you put too many seeds in a cloud, you can actually shut rain off. The CIA also did this around the same time as Operation Popeye, and it was called Project Nile Blue. And what they were doing was cloud seeding over the Gulf of Mexico to make the rain fall in the ocean before it reached Cuba so they could kill Castro's sugar crops.
Wow.
Today, an Iranian brigadier general accused Israel and other countries around them of cloud theft.
Yeah, I saw that.
Of stealing their rain. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in 2011 and 2012 said the exact same thing. They're stealing our rain. It literally hit 156 degrees in Iran. So weather warfare is still a very real potential. And, Pat had mentioned it. Well, how can you actually catch anybody doing any of this? This is the most important question asked so far. And that's one of my main focuses is something I call the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. So we have NMOD on the books. Weather warfare is illegal. But it's pointless without some kind of verification regime.
Right.
So
or accountability.
Just like when they banned upper atmospheric nuclear explosions with the Limited Test Ban Treaty, they went and built a sensor network, and it's called the International Monitoring System. It's run by the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization, CTBTO, and they have infrasound recorders and seismic sensors all over the planet. That way, when Kim Jong-un goes and detonates a nuclear bomb underground or in the atmosphere, they can triangulate where it occurred and know that somebody just violated the ban. The problem with weather warfare is there's no way to know if somebody's violating the ban. And that's why I've proposed a two-part solution to weather warfare and just weather modification in general, to bring transparency, accountability to the world of weather modification, let alone weather warfare. And it's a very simple process. Up front, everybody worldwide has the same thing as that form you saw. Not just the United States has the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972. Worldwide, there will be an international registry of atmospheric experimentation. And you must give prior notice that's on the live website that says, I'm going to screw with the weather at this location. That way, if you cause a tornado or freaky size hail and you destroy somebody's property, God forbid you kill somebody, your ass can be dragged into court at the very least. Secondly, if you do not inform the International Registry of Atmospheric Experiments that you were going to do it, then by assumption, we can assume that you're up to no good nefarious purposes, weather warfare. But that's still pointless if we can't catch them.
Right.
So part 2, trust but verify.
Yeah.
Build 2 sensor networks. One run by the government, the universities, and all of the guys that are so busy monitoring freaking CO2 that they can actually go and monitor the weather for alterations for weather warfare tactics, whether they're chemical or electromagnetic, and then simultaneously build a citizen-powered network, which I hope to do, and I call my website Climate Viewer, climateviewer.com and climateviewer.org. Climateviewer.org is my map, where you can see all this weather stuff in real time. It's live. And I've mapped out all of the ionospheric heaters around the globe, cloud seeding projects around the globe. And the purpose of it is to build a climate viewer for your backyard. And what it would do is have a camera pointed at the sky that has a real-time feed, that is stored of what your cloud conditions look like. It takes rain samples and analyzes them in real time so we can see what chemicals are coming down in your rain. It measures electromagnetic spectrum from 5G to ELF, ULF, things that can modify the weather. So that way we have a sensor network that's not able to be shut off by the government,
right?
When they want to just have their way. We
some
have
form of independent accountability.
Yeah, because during the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear meltdown, EPA turned the RADNet off, and that's the radiation detection network. So they just shut it off because people were freaking out. They didn't want everybody to panic. So if the government has the ability to just shut the network off, once again,
right,
it's pointless.
Yeah.
So that's why I propose, a two-part solution. One government, university powered. Of course, they got more dollars than us. They've got the satellites and everything, but to also have ground-based sensors run by the people for the people that are constantly monitoring on a worldwide basis for atmospheric changes. Of course, the scientists will be able to benefit from this as well, and it'll help us to be able to catch people in the act of doing things like trying to steer hurricanes, things like that. Because when the hurricane finally gets here and we find, tons of, strange chemicals falling in the rainfall, then that might actually turn some heads. But right now, we have a complete lack of evidence problem.
Well, and when he says something about steering hurricanes, go back to the beginning of this interview in Project Sirius, where they actually seeded a tropical storm October 13th, 1947. It's out there, ladies and gentlemen. It's not even a matter of if it exists.
They did it way more than just that one with Project Sirius. That was followed up by Project Scud, just like Scud missiles in Iran. And then finally Project Storm Fury. You jump forward to 2008, and then the Department of Homeland Security Hurricane Modification Workshop, where they literally said,
wow,
Katrina was so bad that we want to prevent the next Katrina. So let's get, scientists together, and the Department of Homeland Security will look into steering hurricanes away from the United States. Miraculously, we went into a 10-year hurricane drought. Interestingly enough, now, since this is Conspiracy Farm, I'm going to throw a conspiracy your way.
All right.
So Obama comes into office. He's a big supporter of the global warming crowd. COP21, Climate Paris Accord. Department of Homeland Security, Bill Gates, and a couple Geo-Engineers make patents for steering hurricanes. They go to Congress. They have a hearing to get funding for steering hurricanes. And magically, the Department of Homeland Security picks it up and says, let's go with this. And then we go into this 10-year drought of major hurricanes hitting America. And then what happens? First day in office, Trump pulls out of the TPP. Next thing he does, pulls out of COP21. Who modifies the weather? Climate scientists. Who was most pissed off about them pulling out of COP21? Climate scientists.
Makes perfect sense.
Happened. We got nailed with 3 major hurricanes, and they all hit southern states, which is typical. But is it a coincidence that, for 10 years after the Hurricane Modification Workshop, there were no hurricanes hitting America, no major ones? They all fluffed out or, bent back out to sea. And then magically Trump comes into office and suddenly we're getting nailed with hurricanes.
I mean, when you talk about the pervasive nature of this technology and how it has been weaponized, I mean, we're not crazy talking. That's not a crazy theory right there, bro.
That's really not. No.
That's really not. I mean, they've set the precedence that they've used it before. And so I'm sorry, we're sort of short on time, but I still have plenty of questions. Chemtrails. I mean, obviously we heard about them, whether it's chem or contrails, laying out what you have laid out about how they've been aerosolizing the atmosphere forever. Talk to me about what you think chemtrails are.
So chemtrails is the most complicated topic. Literally, you could do 3 hours on this and not cover it all. So I'm going to try to give you the most
condensed, Cliff Notes version.
Cliff Note version. There are really 3 types of chemtrails. There's the chemtrails that everybody talks about, and that's the white clouds coming out of planes. There are chemtrails which are biological weapons, which are well documented on my website as well, climateviewer.com. And then there are chemtrails from space. And these are used in conjunction with things like ionospheric heaters and radars. So chemtrails from space are sounding rockets and satellites that release chemicals into the atmosphere. Okay? They release barium, trimethyl aluminum, lithium, sulfur hexafluoride, which is the most potent greenhouse gas. It's banned, but whenever you're screwing with space weather, F it, I guess.
Yeah.
Cesium and other chemicals. So they release these in the upper atmosphere. They cook them with a microwave. And they do that because, much like when you go in to have your heart checked or something, they will put a tracer into your body because they want to see all of the fine detail that they can't see on the CAT scan or the MRI otherwise. So similarly, you can't see wind without something in it. Radars cannot see wind. They can't see wind on ground level. They can't see wind in the upper atmosphere. They also cannot see the Van Allen belts or the magnetic field lines of the shape of the ionosphere. So what they do is they dump chemtrails in space in the upper atmosphere in order to be able to see them with radars and then modify them. So that's one type of chemtrail. But the most prevalent type of chemtrail, and I'll do the other one real quick, combatives, biological weapons. These are tasteless, colorless, and invisible. So you're not, the type of chemtrails that most people associate with mind control, like the gay bomb, which is a real thing. Look it up.
Help me out, bro. What's that?
The gay bomb was came up with the U.S. Army Chemical Corps. The idea was to drop a chemical on Iraqi troops to make them so enraged in love with their homosexual partner next to them holding a rifle that they were too busy to fight.
What is it like laced? Was it like just had DMT, not DMT, but like MDMA in there, like straight ecstasy throughout the land?
That probably is a part of it. They tested it, dug away proving ground. It was.
They won't come out of their foxholes. They're busy.
Going to get their goat on, dude. Going to get their goat on. Man, you just heard a chorus of bass throughout the whole joint.
Hey,
I joke.
At the same time, just remember what happened in Operation Desert Storm. You got the Republican Guard, the most feared people in the world. What they do? They came up like hands up, don't shoot. So, were they sprayed with the gay bomb? Were they used? They used infrasonic weapons on them. They used sound weapons on them, like babies crying. You would not believe the kind of psychological warfare. They dropped pamphlets, on them. Just words are mind control, but we won't get into all that. So anyway, there is chemical weapons like Agent Green, which is a F-oxysporum. It's a like a fungicide that basically a fungus that they sprayed on the coca plants, the cocaine plants in Colombia. It was called Plan Colombia. This is recent, like the 80s. And they were spraying this stuff all over Colombia. Well, F-oxysporum ended up showing up in Texas in wheat and in cattle's brains. So
wow,
and in a lot of cokeheads' brains, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I truly hate cocaine, dude. I just like the way it smells.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
All right, so I've got to derail this a little bit, and
Please.
we got to get off the gay bomb thing. We got to go straight to these huge rain machines. One of the hosts of the I forget what the car show is in the UK, but one of the guys was a host for Discovery Channel or whatever, and it's a massive, literally it looks like a NASA launching pad. It's literally bigger than that, and it has
doghouse rocket.
Yeah, it's got rockets in it, and it injects the water into the rockets, and it just shoots out massive clouds, and it starts to storm.
Yeah, that's at Stennis Air Force Base.
Okay.
And basically it's a rocket testing facility, But basically, it was by the BBC, and it was like,
Right.
rockets make rain, and it's a pretty famous clip if anybody hasn't seen it already.
It's incredible.
I think I have seen that. That is incredible.
Yeah. So one of the most common things they say about planes is, well, it's mainly water vapor coming out of planes. Well, the same is true with rockets nowadays. They produce a massive amount of or water vapor, and you can literally see this thing make huge clouds. Well, that's not the only thing that makes huge clouds. Here, I'll bring this up real quick. Give me 1 second.
I appreciate you bringing your visuals, bro. This has really been helpful.
That helps.
Yeah.
Definitely helps.
I did an article called 10 Technologies to Own the Weather Today. And this is on the front page of weathermodificationhistory.com. But 10 technologies to own the weather today. And if you look right here, and I'll bring it up to full screen, F11, and let's zoom that down just a hair so we get it all on there. And you can see these are the 10 technologies. And right about, where is it? I have a name for that damn thing, and I want to make sure I get it right. Where is it? All right, the TMS 65. I got the J2X rocket right here, water vapor pollution, wet surface air coolers, smokestacks, cooling towers, TMS 65. This is a jet engine that's used by the Russian military to wash biological and chemical agents off of tanks, like really quickly. So like all the tanks get in a column, and they use the jet engine to, blow the radiation off of them, or anthrax or whatever. They also can be used exactly like what you were seeing in that rocket video. They can produce massive amounts of clouds using these types of jet engines mounted on military hardware. Little known fact. It's called the TMS-65. And I go through the whole list there. Ionospheric heaters, sounding rockets, satellites, lasers, which can be used to steer lightning bolts, induce rainfall. They've even talked about using lasers to break up the chemtrails that everybody sees, to make the ice finer so that it persists longer, so that it cools the planet more.
Wow. It's really insane how so many, I kind of have known that weather modification exists, and I heard that there were some laws about it, but ladies and gentlemen, we're not only talking about if it does exist, this is so
detailed that it does.
Detailed and institutionalized for decades and decades and decades, and how different countries are using it. This, I hate to keep reiterating it, but this is beyond theory, ladies and gentlemen. Weather modification is absolutely real. Wow.
Well, you wouldn't believe how, I've actually got the NOAA reports. So here, I might as well show you that one too. The weather modification reports, the things that you saw earlier, where you fill out the form, I actually called NOAA and I got the reports. And those are not easy to come by. So what I'm going to do real quick is...
Who did you pose as to get
I was going to say, do you have to be like a government body or something to do that?
No, you just have to... It's a Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, so FOIA business. Cool.
It used to be on corporateservices.noaa.gov.
What the hell's the Sargasso Sea? It's supposed to be the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, but since I've been doing my work, they've kind of made that website go away and hid it. But regardless, these are the actual weather modification reports for 2004. You can see them on the screen here. If I give this a black background, it'll probably show up better. So let's do that.
So these are spots where instances of weather modification is taking place?
Yeah, these are the actual weather modification reports. So you can click on them and you can see, and I'll blow it up real big so people at home can see.
And this is in what time span? October through December?
It says right here, October
2004,
December,
okay.
2004, 5 days, 976 grams of silver iodide, 480 square miles. The weather modification was done by the Desert Research Institute.
Dear Lord.
It was paid for by the state of Nevada. The purpose was snowpack augmentation. Snowpack augmentation, all these mountains you see here, the purpose is to cover the mountains in snow during the wintertime. So they run from October to March of each year. All
So
right?
basically, the Rocky Mountains is running weather modification to have more snow.
Yeah, and what they do is they use these things called ground-based cloud seeders. So I'll show you all of those real quick. Let me bring those up. Bam, bam. Skip over the HARP stuff.
Whoa! What? Oh, those are forest fires.
Yeah, no, these are not forest fires. These are ground-based cloud seeding generators.
Those red flame-looking things. That's what they are.
Yeah. I'm going to show you them all real quick.
Dude, that's like all over the West Coast. So does that? I mean, obviously, it baits the question. Does that have something to do with the fires that's been going on out there?
So, well, no, yes and no, because like I said, if you overseed the sky, you can cause drought conditions.
I'm more concerned with all of them in the Midwest.
That is pretty heavy, isn't it?
Right here.
Oh no, that's
a little west of us. Okay.
It's
So it's
all
all right.
West Coast. So what do we have on the East Coast? We have torrential floods. We have basketball-sized hail. We have all these tornadoes. And since 1946, this stuff has only exploded. So
But that's how it works, though. The weather starts there, and then the Earth
Yeah, the
rotates.
Gulf Stream moisture comes up, meets the weather coming off the Rockies.
Well,
and
yeah,
we
the
get
Earth
the big
rotates
storms in
from left
the Midwest
from
and
right
out
to
east.
left to right to left, and then whatever weather's modified over in the west, the east just rolls
It's going
right
to roll
into
across
it.
the country
Yeah.
from west to east. Yeah.
And this is what a ground-based cloud seeding generator looks like. On the left-hand side, you got the fancy version. This is from Wyoming. It's got a solar panel, a burner head, temperature probes, satellite communication. It's remotely operated. It's got two big propane tanks, like you'd see near a mobile home at the bottom.
If there are any, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jim, but if there are any farmers out there who are listening to this and are seeing this, if we could possibly have one of those arrive here in Iowa, just show up somehow. It disappeared off a mountain somewhere, and it can show up in the Midwest, and we can do some tests with a cloud seeding machine. That would be wonderful.
Oh, they've done many tests.
We want to do the tests.
Pat wants to manipulate the weather over here.
I want to water my lawn, brother.
Yeah,
that'd be great. You have your own little cloud machine.
It's going to be completely random, dude, because at the end of the day, with several $1 million in trying to prove the National Academy of Science is wrong, they did the Wyoming Weather Modification Pilot Program, and what they ended up learning was we can't prove that we did a damn thing. And I have the article right here. It's called "Cloud Seeding: Gambling with Your Weather." And basically the quote goes like this. I'll scroll down to it. Analysis showed that cloud seeding produced a 3% increase in precipitation with a 28% probability that this result happened by chance. Right there. Most scientists and statisticians wouldn't accept that level of uncertainty. So after 60 freaking years of doing cloud seeding
and billions
of
dollars,
can't prove this is what's going to happen. Yet millions of dollars are spent by individual groups like Sacramento Municipal Utility District. You're paying your water bill, and they're modifying the weather. And you can see that, all along California. This is down in San Diego. I mean, any one of these cloud seeding generators are operating every October to March of every year.
And just so people who are watching and not listening or listening and watching, but where can they find this information? Where's this?
What's the website?
This is on climateviewer.org, and it's called Climate Viewer 3D. It's under full screen maps, but you can literally go to the categories and
I got you.
Individual maps. So if you were to go to pollution and privacy and then geoengineering and weather modification, you'll see that all of those maps, including my 10 technologies, my environmental modification accountability ags there, and then all of the different ones. So Colorado Cloud Seeding Generators 2019, NOAA reported weather modification activities 2004 through 2012, all right there. And then all of the different generators. Charles Hatfield and the San Diego floods. Yes, I mapped that out too. I love to map. I create these maps.
So when I said something about, I'm sorry, but San Diego paying Charles Hatfield $10,000, he never got it because the rain that he caused to spread caused like $3 million in damage, so they never paid him.
Yeah, which really brings us to an interesting point. This is one of my favorite stories. all around, and it's still relevant to this day. Let me bring it up real, and it's called An Ode to Pluviculture.
What is pluviculture, bro? You said that another time.
Pluviculture was weather modification before cloud seeding was invented. So weather modification from 1800 to like 1946. So that was the Charles Hadfield days. And basically it goes like this. And I'd like to read something to you.
Go for it.
And then we can do some, 5G. Said Jeremy Jonathan Joseph Jones, the weather is far too dry, so I reckon I'll have to stir my bones and try the effect of concussive tones upon the lazy sky. So Jeremy Jonathan Joseph went away to the nearest town, and there his money was quickly spent for queer contraptions, all intent to make the rain come down. There were cannon and mortars and lots of shells and dynamite by the ton, with a gas balloon and chime of bells and various other mystic spells to overcloud the sun. The day was fair and the sky was bright and never a cloud was seen when Jeremy Jonathan set alight his biggest fuse and screwed up tight the joints of the rain machine. He fired a shot and barely two when the sky began to pale. The third one brought a heavy dew, but at the fourth tornadoes blew with thunder, rain, and hail. It rained all night and another day, and then for a week or more. It flooded the farm in a scandalous way and drowned poor Jeremy, sad to say, who couldn't stop the pour. Oh, Jeremy Jonathan Joseph Jones, your farm was fair to see, but now a lake lies over its stones, from whose dark bosom horrific moans are heard nocturnally. To check the flood you've started, I've heard all efforts were in vain, until the Bureau at Washington stirred and stopped the storm with a single word, by just predicting rain. And that is where we are to this day. Hatfield, he was paid to make weather in L.A., and he was successful.
In 1915, mind you.
Yeah, in 1905.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then in 1915 through 16, about January of 16, San Diego paid them to fill the Lake Morena reservoir, and or said they were going to. But in order to do that, they would have to accept responsibility for all the flood damage.
Yes, so that's right. Couldn't quite get paid.
Do that.
Yeah.
And, this is where I said it was part coincidence. As a child, I went to Grateful Dead concerts and, Fish and a band called Widespread Panic. And Widespread Panic has a song called Hatfield. So, as a child, I heard this song about Hatfield. He made rain for L.A. And, I was
so
fascinated
bizarre,
by the story.
That's crazy. I've obviously heard of, that's
so crazy.
Listen to the song Hatfield by Widespread Panic. It's phenomenally good.
Well, no, absolutely. And I appreciate you for that, because that's, hidden plain in sight. So before we let you slide, and this probably could take, a minute itself, but I definitely want to talk to you about it before we let you go. 5G, man. I mean, all of this is tied together, and to my layman's terms, 5G, first G was the first cells, 2G was what let us text, 3G got us online, 4G gives us kind of the speed we use today. 5G, we're looking at 1,000 times more traffic and 10 times more faster than 4G. But this is going to mean
body penetrating microwaves,
many more antennas with these as you call electromagnetic frequencies, and we're already inundated by them, but 5G is going to take it to another level. And then one of your other videos, you're talking about how they're doing it in space as well. Talk to me about 5G, man. And is it as harmful as everybody says?
Along with the spraying with the metals,
the Geo-Engineering,
how the microwave is going to affect the metals in the atmosphere, all of that.
And if this goes into Agenda 21.
So the thing about 5G that I want to start with is most people already have 5G in their house, and they don't even know it.
The smart dryers, smart machines.
It's on your cable modem. Go look.
Oh.
My cable modem has, and you'll see it, 2G, 5G. They have two different Wi-Fis, and one of which is 5G. Most people don't know this. And what you'll find is if you get on your regular 2G Wi-Fi, you can reach that thing, far out in your yard because it's a lower frequency.
Right.
And the 5G may be faster, but you got to be damn near standing on top of the cable modem to get a good signal. So that's because it uses a shorter wavelength. Now, it's faster, but it's a higher frequency. Now, the thing about the human body and frequency is the higher the frequency, actually, in reality, the less it penetrates the body. So they have this thing called the active denial system. Have you ever heard of it?
Negative.
It's a military weapon.
Okay.
It's part of the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate. So and China just built a copy of it because, they steal all our technology. But regardless, it's called a millimeter wave gun. They also have these things called LRAD.
I've heard of those.
That's the sonic version of it. But basically,
they use those on protesters. I've seen that.
And the vibration that creates the heat.
The
microwave.
Create heat. It puts heat on people.
Yeah, it uses millimeter waves.
Yep.
And it doesn't penetrate the skin. So this is the part that most people miss about 5G, that actually when you go up in frequency, you have less penetration of the body. If you wanted to do mind control on an individual, it's more effective to use sonic weapons. And we've seen that in Moscow, we've seen that in Cuba and in China, the embassies.
Yeah, they hit some of our diplomats in Cuba with it, correct?
Yeah, those were sonic weapons.
Right.
Now, that's different than electromagnetic. Most people don't understand these sorts of things. It's kind of complicated for the layperson. But they have things like silent subliminal transmission system and voice to skull, V2K is what it's called. But these are ways of transmitting thoughts into people's heads. These are not what 5G, not a concern with 5G. With 5G, you should be concerned about power density. So the thing about electromagnetics and human health is that whenever there's a extreme density of energy, that's when it can damage your DNA. So if you want to be worried about 5G, but you go to a concert inside a building and every asshole in there has a cell phone, you're getting way more Wi-Fi than you ever will from a 5G tower.
Interesting.
This is something that nobody considers, and I personally am electrosensitive. I have electrohyperactive sensitivity disorder or whatever. I have Graves' disease. It gave me a thyroid condition. Basically, I ran an IT department, 5 stores. I had a Bluetooth in my ear, a cell phone on this ear, a wide area network Wi-Fi behind me, and 4 monitors in front of me.
Right.
And most people don't even know that blue light from monitors affects your health.
Right.
So all of these electromagnetic spectrums were hitting me at the same time. So I was getting nailed with all this EMF, and I didn't know anything about it till I was sick as a dog, and I developed Graves' disease, which is hyperthyroidism. And I lost like 50 pounds in like 4 months. And I've since, gone to an all-wired life. Everything in my house is wired. If you're worried about 5G, and I have people call me regularly saying I'm a targeted individual, and I give them the same rundown. Do you have Wi-Fi
when you say
in your
targeted,
house?
what do you mean you're targeted?
Targeted individual. I'm hearing sounds in my head.
Or gang stalking and stuff.
The government's out to get me.
Oh.
And first I ask them why. What makes you so damn important? I have the world's only NSA map. I have every NSA facility from the Five Eyes.
Can you get that over to us when you get time?
Yeah, when you get a second.
Because we want to be targeted also.
No, negative. Pat might. NSA, I do not. Thank you.
You don't want to try it, homie.
No.
I was interviewed by an NSA guy on my beach vacation at the pool.
Nice.
That was fun.
Nope.
But anyway, you made me lose my point.
Inundated. You had your house wired. People coming to you who are targeted.
So I ask people that claim to be targeted individuals. I say, first of all, what makes you so important? Second of all, do you have Wi-Fi in your house? Answer is always yes. Do you cut it off at night? Answer is no. Do you have a cell phone? Yes. Do you keep it by your bedside? Yes. How often are you on it? All the time. Do you have cordless phones in your house? Yes. Do you microwave your food? Yes. You're an idiot.
You just described me and called me an idiot.
Yeah. So you, sir, are an idiot, and you're destroying your body. So in order for people that don't know this,
he says from the safety of his home,
induce diabetes in rats in labs, they hit them with a Wi-Fi signal.
Really?
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
Wireless, all right, so basically on the most simplest level, your nervous system is an antenna. Okay? It sends and receives signals.
Yeah.
Okay? So whenever electromagnetic energy pierces the skin, it has a certain resistance level to it. Anybody who's ever worked with car stereos knows that, if you touch a cut, that 12 volt will shock you, but generally speaking, it won't. You touch a 220, that's your butt,
Yeah.
So you have this insulation around you, but the lower the frequency, the more easily it passes through it. So the higher the frequency, the more resistance is at the skin level. So your antenna system, your nervous system, can pick up electromagnetic radiation from the outside. What does this do? This interrupts hormones in the brain and production of hormones in the brain. It interrupts your sleep cycle. So if you have blue light coming from your monitors or your cell phone or your television, your big plasma screen you just had to have, and you wonder why you can't go to sleep, it's because you're staring at a blue light. If you have your Wi-Fi on at night, you're destroying cell reformation while you sleep. All of these things combined, I call it Wi-Fried. You can read my FAQ on this at climateviewer.com/EMF. Like electromagnetic frequency.
And these are the type of lights.
climateviewer.com/EMF.
These are the type of lights, the rays that come from your TV and your monitor and all that sort of stuff that simulates the same type of lights that come at sunup that would wake human beings up. Correct?
Yeah. So what you can do to combat that is get a blue light filter. The most common one I recommend is called F.Lux. F.Lux. It's free software. You can get it on your computer. And what it'll do is, as the night progresses, your screen will turn more red. So you'll look like you're in Hunt for Red October, and you're in a submarine, and the screen's all red. And what that'll do is that'll help you go to sleep. They're inventing new televisions that don't use RGB. They use a different form of producing the light images that's and I can't remember, it's like LCYG or something like that, but it produces an exactly similar image to RGB without the blue light damage. So they're actually have recognized this in the scientific fields and health fields, and they're trying to do something about it. There are cities who have replaced all of their street lights with these LED lights, and then had lawsuits by individuals claiming massive headaches and everything, and then had to spend millions of dollars to go back to incandescent bulbs to take the LED lights out, because the blue light was literally driving the entire freaking city crazy.
That's interesting. And the interesting thing about televisions, and I just learned this not that long ago, televisions are super inexpensive now, and almost literally anybody can buy a TV. They're just so cheap. But what they are, how they're recouping their money, is a lot of the Netflix and the Hulus and all that sort of stuff off those subscriptions. A certain amount of money goes back to the television producers out of those companies. And so basically the televisions, the way it was put, is the televisions are the razor, the old school razor, and we're the razor blades. We're the fillers.
Well, a lot of those smart TVs are sold with those in them. Hulu, Netflix already pre-installed.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So so it's a kickback system that they're using.
And they've even got certain Samsung was busted with this, where they actually have the webcam in the TV itself.
Oh yeah.
And what it was doing was actually tracking the number of faces viewing the screen at one time, so that they could say, this individual's actually not just watching this Blu-ray DVD. They're charging people to see it because there were 35 people watching it at once. So that they can
a pay-per-view event of a sporting event, a big fight, whatever.
Your TV is watching you, ladies.
Yeah, there was actually a law that almost got passed called Big Brother is Watching You, where they would require smart TVs to inform the user when the cameras were active and watching them. Make stuff up.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry.
Back to 5G, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, we got to let you slide here in just a couple minutes. So how does this lead to the term I hear all of the time, a technocracy, where data is the new oil? Like, just what you just said, they're monitoring your face, your facial expressions while you're watching TVs. What does this have to do with your voice? What does this have to do with the emerging technocracy that we see?
So technocracy has its roots in the early 1900s. The technocratic movement was pretty popular in the 30s, with up to like 500,000 members. A book that I recommend for everybody is Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of the New World Order. And it's by Patrick Wood. He runs technocracy.news if you want to check his website out. But basically, technocracy is at the root of everything that you hear going on, from global warming, climate change, anything with the word sustainable in it, anything with the
new
word
Green Deal, the new Green Deal from OAC.
Yeah. I said New Green Deal too on a video I just made. It's actually the Green New Deal.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whatever, but it is just the Johnny Come Lately newest Green Deal, if you really want to be realistic about it. Oh my goodness.
What's up, baby girl?
I've been broke into by my 2-year-old.
That's all right.
That's adorable.
Way to show up on the set.
Hot set.
Please shut my door.
Sorry.
Fam's home.
Hey, that's all right, buddy.
That's a beautiful
thing. It's just the newest Green Deal come lately, and really, technocracy is a one world government controlled by scientists and the scientific method. And their goal is to control all resources and basically achieve what they call the balanced load. And they would have one monetary unit for the entire planet, which would be a energy-based unit or maybe carbon unit.
The SDR.
And it would probably be a cryptocurrency, which is why we see this big push for digital currency.
Cashless society.
Once we have a cashless society and a borderless society
implanted
and sensors
chips
everywhere, technocrats can control everything.
Judge Dredd, baby. I tell you, it's going to be Judge Dredd. We're going to have megacities, and then we're going to have the forbidden cursed earth where cats like you and I are out there camping, trying to live
That's
off the
where
land.
I'm going, man. I'm telling my wife.
Anybody who walks into our camp with a cell phone gets it on
if
the
my
spot.
wife is listening, we are going off the grid. We are going off the grid. We're selling the house, and we're building off the grid.
You got to go back and teach your kids how to use a rotary phone.
That won't matter much. They have BAE Systems has this thing called the Laser Developed Atmospheric Lens, where they're taking HARP technology to, create lenses out of the ionosphere to spy on.
I have tinfoil shingles already prepared.
They'll be able to see your butthole through that. There's
he said down to the bung.
Tinfoil shingles.
So there is no real protecting yourself from the technocracy. Is that what you're saying? You could go out as far as you want into the woods.
There is a way to protect yourself from it, and it's called Donald Trump. Right now, destroying the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that would have sealed the deal on the technocracy like instantaneously, because the goal of it was to create a supranational union. This is called communitarian law. Communitarian law is the circumvention of, local law,
right,
for the benefit of the community.
It's some United Nations based stuff.
Yeah, United Nations. So
Donald Trump, he did say something recently about frowning upon 5G.
He said it needs to be slowed down. It's got a lot of Chinese technology in it. He knows what's going on with it. He's been informed of the 5G stuff, and he
actually tweeted that we should kick 5G and even 6G into overdrive and be the leaders of the technology.
Right, but he said go straight to 6G, right?
Well, is he trying to slow it down just because China's taking the lead?
He doesn't want Chinese. He doesn't want Chinese technology.
He doesn't mind 5G and the ubiquitous surveilling constantly. He just wants to be in charge of it. Is that what we're saying?
I think it's more that Trump's a builder, and he's not been briefed on the health ramifications of building very dense networks of microwave emitting transmitters.
I don't know, man.
Well, the information isn't out there yet. That's kind of the whole part. We're gonna have to wait like 10, 15 years once this apparatus gets set up to be like, oh, this hurts us, this doesn't hurt us.
The thing that, look, I mean, I'm a layperson when it comes to this technology. I have kept my ears open to this sort of thing, and it, perked my interest, and it worried me a little bit when I listened to a few lectures of experts, scientists saying, listen, this is a really, really bad idea. This is going to fry people. So you can't, I guess, guys, I would say this to both of you, is you can't say to me, as a guy who's got punched in the head for a living, if I'm aware of this stuff, Donald Trump, who's a Wharton School of Business grad and technically a genius with 175, 180 IQ, this guy's aware of it. He knows the ramifications of it. So I would say, he's not slowing it down just to be in control of it. I would think, because he doesn't want everybody in America being fried from it either.
I'd like to believe that. But at the same time,
he wears a white hat. Damn it!
He is a builder.
I like Trump on a lot of things. Like there are many, many things. I voted for a human hand grenade. I got what I paid for. So
a human hand grenade.
That's really all I wanted to see was just something destroy what is manifesting in Washington D.C. and he is more than paid in full, baby.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he is talking about offshore drilling, right here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. He just doesn't give a damn about the environment, and he's a business guy. And business people, the last thing they care about is human health. It is, anybody, Aaron Brockovich, for damn sake. You look at any kind of industry, whether it's fracking, whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's the wireless, the lobby behind the whole, cell phone thing.
It's all about the bottom line.
I'll give you an example. WLTX Columbia, local, news thing, did a story on a girl who had a cell phone that she kept in her bra all the time, and she got cancer on, her breast, and, there was a direct link there. And they aired that. They put it on their website. It was up for maybe 24 hours before that article and all the footage and everything about it was deleted.
Really?
And you know why?
Yes, of course.
Because the cell phone industry does not want people to know this stuff. One of the most famous cases, there was this guy who was a lawyer, and he literally got cancer in his hand, from, using the cell phone so much. So,
So, not to cut you off because we are just killing it on time. So, it is your professional opinion that 5G is not near as bad as 4G?
I think they're equally bad. That's my point. I
thought you were saying with lower waves or whatever, it's not as penetrated of the skin, the higher waves. I forget, or maybe the other way around.
Let me rephrase this. If you live in a big city, which I do not, I have nothing to worry about 5G. If you live in New York City, your ass gonna get fried. You already are getting fried.
Yeah, because they have to have so many 5G towers. I mean, it's literally every couple buildings, right?
Yeah, I mean, they literally are talking about putting them on the light posts, on traffic light posts, everywhere. And, trees can literally stop a 5G signal. So they're talking about cutting down trees just so that the signal will travel further. it's not going to penetrate. Like if you live in a trailer, it's not even going to penetrate the walls of your trailer. Whereas the older style cell phone signals will.
Interesting.
So the higher the frequency, the less the less distance it travels at a great power density. So that's why they have things called MIMO, or massively integrated,
multiple input, multiple output.
Yeah, thank you. But basically the idea is to create these mesh networks where they overlap, so you never lose coverage at 5G.
So you're just inundated constantly.
5G, is that it requires so many phased array antennas to be put up, and that they have to literally have almost direct line of sight with you.
They basically have five levels of it: millimeter wave, small cell, massive MIMOs, the multiple input, multiple output, beamforming, and
it is
full
complete.
duplex.
It is just complete.
It's crazy
mapping of our world.
Yeah, but you got to think about this, and I'll go back to it every time. Nobody considers the fact that Google is putting Chrome, laptops in 5 fifth graders' classrooms. There's a cell phone tower next to the freaking schoolhouse. There's 16 different Wi-Fi hotspots in the schoolhouse, and there's 32 Wi-Fi laptops in one damn room. So whenever they figured out the safe density, they call it 4 watts per per pound or something like that. It was called the specific absorption rate.
Right.
Whenever they came up with this 4 watts for cell phones, it was based on a 21-year-old male soldier's skull. So they don't consider that children's skulls are thinner. They don't consider, any
more
of
vulnerable.
These things.
And if it was a marine skull, it's impenetrable.
Oh, I'm serious.
Right?
Those things are bulletproof. So, that's kind of the point of all this. That even in the book you get in every cell phone, it says, "Do not touch the human skin." Keep X amount of inches away from the body. Everybody's got it in their back pocket, frying their ass and their balls.
Yeah, my gonads.
Yeah, I mean, seriously.
Wow.
The first thing to absorb electromagnetic radiation are the balls, the eyeballs, the testicles, the ovaries, the thyroid, mostly the liquid, filled vesicles in the body, and obviously the brain. So a lot of people get glioma from cell phone usage. They got the hot ear. If you get a hot ear, that is because that thing is literally cooking.
Back to flip phones we go.
Yeah. Good thing the contents of the balls have been put on the shelf for the duration of my life. But Jim Lee, man, this has been a lot of information. Also, give us a little social networking, your website there. Where can we shout you out, ladies and gentlemen? Oh, and before, go ahead. Little social networking.
Yes. So I got 3 websites. ClimateViewer.com is my main flagship. It links to all my other websites. It's my blog. You can donate at patreon.com/ClimateViewer. I take monthly donations. Everything I do is for free. It's Creative Commons. You can remix it, put it on your website. I do this because I was a Boy Scout and I want to, I'm doing this for my daughters who, busted through the door a couple seconds ago.
Very cool.
Yeah, because, if I don't do it, who will? Yeah. And, for me, this weather modification stuff is personal. I, don't get enough time to talk about EMF safety or nuclear radiation. I talk about electrosmog and radiation from, any source. So nuclear radiation.
You are the Julian Assange of weather modification.
We're definitely going to have to get you back to talk on some of those other things as well. And, thank you to Stephen Watt, man, OG farmer from Canada, for linking us up. And I definitely appreciate it. And I definitely, next time, want to talk to you about Iran. You said has an EMP. Woo, the possible ramifications of that, ladies and gentlemen.
We could get into shutting the power off all day long, because at the end of the day, that's the greatest threat to humankind right now, is not nuclear weapons.
How many people starve when the power goes out? You can't get gas. You can't use your
What'd
cards.
You say,
nothing.
Jim? 6 months if the grid goes down? We got 6 months before people start.
2/3 of a Heritage Foundation said that if we had an EMP, either by solar flare like the Carrington event, or by high altitude electromagnetic pulse from a nuclear detonation above the United States, that 2/3 of Americans would die within 6 months.
And if it happened this winter, we'd all be dead.
Without a doubt.
Because it was so brutal.
So almost 9 years ago, I wrote an article called Alone in the Dark on my first blog when I was still resonated. Nobody knew me from a hole in the wall. And I had this dream where an EMP went off, and the problem was that basically we have 440 nuclear reactors worldwide. We have over 100 just in America. If this scenario did occur, we would have 100 simultaneous Fukushimas, because what would happen? It would fry the circuit boards in there. They would not be able to control the cooling in the nuclear reactors.
That would be a nightmare.
You didn't think about that one, did you, Jeff?
I'm thinking about I can't flush my toilet, or I can't get gas.
Cordova, Illinois, 30 miles up the Mississippi River. The Quad Cities doesn't have any drinking water.
Yes, I mean,
right?
Just the shutdown of the internet. I mean, you're probably going to have people just go raving freaking nuts.
Yeah,
from that
that's
alone.
just scratching the surface.
And then they're going to realize, oh wait, I don't have any food because I've never prepared a day in my life. And then you're literally the TV show Revolution originally started on this real world premise, and then delved off into aliens and whatever else they could use to get away from the facts.
Right.
China's already hacked our SCADA network. They could shut the power off at any moment. Russia's done the same. Iran's done the same. EMP could do it.
Brought to you by survivalfood.com.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wow, Jim Lee. He also writes children's books, ladies and gentlemen, so go out and grab them. Seriously, man, we have to wind up, but again, thank you so very much. You got back with me in very short order and was able to put this together. Jim Lee, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I thank you so very much for your time, and thank you again, Stephen Watt. And ladies and gentlemen, we always want to thank you for your time and peace and so much love from the champ, Sir Jeffrey Wilson. Holla.
Thank you, Jim.